A lot of people are celebrating Valentine's weekend, but for us Berserk fans, this February is the month of the struggler. We're finally being blessed with a somewhat consistent release schedule, seeing as Studio Gaga has dropped the last half dozen chapters over the course of a single year, but business is finally picking up, you guys. This is your spoiler warning for the rest of the video, so proceed with caution. Rakshas' invasion of the Kushan capital is well underway, and it looks like he's finally turned his attention towards his real target, Guts. At the end of chapter 379, he made his way to Guts' cell and expressed his delight at finally coming face to face with him. But what's the plan? And why is he so excited at meeting the infamous apostle-killing Black Swordsman? We'll answer all those questions and speculate on a few others in this video, so get ready because these are our expert predictions for Berserk chapter 380. Let's begin. Kill the boy and let the man be born, Isidro. And Puck. Chapter 379 revealed a crucial detail about everyone's favorite swordsman in training. Isidro had been looking rather sullen ever since the Black Swordsman's party set sail from Elfhelm, and we think we know why. Everyone is so focused on the war effort that no one wants to work on bringing Yzma and the rest of Elfhelm back to the world, except apparently Isidro. Once he realized that he wasn't going to be anywhere near the main action on account of his age and disposition, Isidro decided that he would leave the Kushan capital and take Puck along with him. Surprisingly, the elf doesn't seem to have a problem with this, despite spending significantly more time bonding with Guts. It could be that Isidro's pure spirit meshes with Puck's empathic abilities a lot more, but to be completely honest, that's pure speculation. We don't actually know why he's acting so aloof and refusing to recognize Rickert, but we can venture a guess or two, and our main one is that Puck senses something's off about this whole Kushan Empire deal. He's been worried about Guts ever since he was pulled into the seahorse, mumbling to himself like a madman, but when he saw him fall and not offer any resistance to Salat's soldiers, perhaps that's when Puck realized his old friend was truly a lost cause. He'd spent enough time with him to know that the loss of Casca was going to kill any remnant of his human spirit and allow the Beast of Darkness to take over entirely, so maybe he's hitching his ride to the one person he feels has more empathic potential than Guts. Isidro has fought several hundred monsters, evil spirits, and possessed heretics, but he's never taken another human life because he can't quite bring himself to kill. For Guts, killing is second nature, and Puck was forced to go along with whatever he did. Maybe he's sticking to Dropey because he doesn't want him turning out like his idol, but Puck's motivations for choosing to leave are to be speculated on another day. We don't have enough information to come to a concrete conclusion, but we strongly suspect that he knows a lot more about the current scenario than he's letting on. Don't forget that Puck was destined to return to Elfhelm with the companions that he came with, in accordance with a prophecy that Danon herself delivered. He clearly has an important role to play in the battle to come, but whether that's as a living being or a martyred motivation, we can't say just yet. What we can say is that Isidro is going through his kill the boy and let the man be born arc because all his concerns are rather childish. I mean, we get that he's trying to save his crush and all, and we commend him for even thinking that he can brave Fantasia with a cutlass, the salamander dagger, a few mini-bombs, and Puck, but Isidro is operating off of emotion, and that's about the most childish thing he can do in a state of war. War requires the participation of every available resource, no matter how small or trivial it may appear, and Isidro is a major asset for the good guys. He might be a bit too obsessed with childish antics, but he is a brave warrior and he's rescued Casca on multiple occasions, something Guts himself has been unable to do. He trusted the kid with rear guard duty and clip-off, and he never blames Isidro for his shortcomings, despite wanting to rip him apart in those moments. When Guts fought Serpico in the colonnade chamber, Isidro didn't believe they were dueling to the death because he just couldn't fathom how comrades can summon such feelings for one another. But then Guts told him that they fought for real, and then Serpico agreed with him, opening Isidro's eyes to the truth of combat for the first time. He's become more determined to improve his skills ever since, but he also struggles with his own mortality. You see, Isidro might be a scheming little stone thief, yet his ambition is to become a great knight someday. He set out on his journey because he heard of Guts' 100-man stand, and though he doesn't know he's traveling with his idol, he does display the chivalric traits that are expected from a true knight of the realm. Isidro defends women, children, and old people first and foremost, as we've seen through his dealings with Morgan and his rival Shirke. He hates the fact that she outshines him in so many categories, and he constantly pranks her, but Isidro would give his life to keep Shirke safe. He might be feeling a little insecure right now, but we think that's the reason Studio Gaga put Azan with him in the first place. The Black Mustache Knight is the truest knight in the entire series. Every time Azan shows up, you can expect two things from him, without question. He will defend the weak and innocent, and he will put up an impressive fight against the forces of evil. He knows he's no match for the kind of monstrosities that have been afflicting the world since the Tower of Conviction collapsed, but Azan's strength is his conviction in his knightly duties. He stands for the good, no matter how destitute he himself becomes, and he never allows his situation to take him away from his knightly teachings. Sure, he slips up every once in a while, like when he was gambling on the seahorse with his crewmates, but all in all, Azan is a shining example of what a knight should be. Dutiful, chivalrous, and above all, loyal. He instantly predicts that Isidro was trying to skip town when he shows up to help him out in 379, and though the boy rejects this assertion, Azan doesn't mind it. He still feels immense shame over his dismissal from the Holy See and being an accidental stowaway on the seahorse, and Isidro has been the only thing that's keeping him sane. Azan saw some of the boy's talent at Vertanis when they unwittingly collaborated at driving Bonebeard away, but he got the full scope of it through their sparring sessions aboard the seahorse. Isidro never managed to land a blow on him, but his feral fighting style and his ability to adapt on the fly impressed Azan greatly. He offers to travel with Isidro and train him along the way because that would be his way of giving back to the universe. Azan might be annoyed with the kid, but he can't deny his potential, and honestly, out of all of the characters that are currently active in the story, he's the only one suited to give the kill the boy speech to Isidro. The rest of his allies are too preoccupied with their own problems, but Azan has no such great duty to tend to. He's got a lot of time on his hands, and he wants to spend it shaping a diamond in the rough. His life, though very different from Guts and Isidro's, has been similar in the kind of hardships he's faced, and somehow he's managed to never stray from his values. Killing is an act that no knight takes pride in, but blood is the seal of their oath of duty. A knight's currency is sanguine, and Isidro knows Azan to be good and dependable. If he too tells him to get over his childish mentality, we feel safe in saying that Isidro will listen to him because he already respects his fighting skills. He's tried and failed to bring Azan down multiple times, so once they get through this troll attack, it's likely that he'll accept the speech as a natural part of his life's journey. Isidro needs this kind of advice right now because he's about to make a guts-level mistake. He's about to abandon irreplaceable things in the pursuit of a fleeting goal, when it would be a lot better if he just worked with his comrades to get to Yzma. His insecurity and arrogance prevent him from asking for help openly, and he needs to realize that even his idol was forced to take assistance when he couldn't go on by himself any longer. Isidro is definitely going to be one character to keep a close eye on as the manga progresses, because we can tell he'll have a major role to play in the series finale. The number of times he's rescued Casca, it would be improper to give him a punk death, as that would ruin his entire arc. Instead, if he dies during the last stand, fans will finally put some respect on his name, and we're just living to see that day finally arrive. He still has a score to settle with Mule Wolfflame after all, and not being willing to kill him won't get him very far. That rivalry was sparked by two boys, but it will be ended by two men. The only question now is which man will emerge bigger, and we're putting all our chips on the Stone Thief. Core Convergence: how our heroes will organize themselves for the trials to come. While Isidro is struggling with making life decisions, the rest of his allies are determined to make it through this dark night, especially now that they've been rallied by their young master. At the beginning of chapter 379, it looked as though the trolls and crazy elephants would stomp out the city's population before our heroes could respond, but by its end, the tide had turned entirely. The Kushan stopped running from the trolls and turned around to face them with whatever weapons they could find because their young master had told them to do it. Salat used Rakshas's appearance to make a calculated play for the position of Supreme General, and we think it worked out for the most part. Being given an official title only works as long as the title bearer is loved and respected by those that follow him, and Salat still had a few enemies in his homeland. Some of the members of the Kurultai Council did not approve of his clan's recent history when compared to their past as true warriors, and they felt that they couldn't trust him entirely. A disagreement is what kickstarted this invasion, but Salat has the support of the most important person in the room, that being the new Kushan Emperor. The new emperor places a lot of importance on his knowledge and skills as a leader because he knows he's too far removed from the situation to be effective in dealing with it. He allows Salat to have free reign over Kushan resources as long as he reports his accomplishments regularly and directs them towards the Falcon of Light's Empire of Demons. He was even willing to shut down dissidents during the council to prop up Salat as the first line of defense, because he recognized the merit of having a person that is intimately aware of their enemies put in charge of the war effort. He couldn't make a decision regarding the same before Rakshas attacked, But with Salat's thought transference stunt, there's little doubt in our minds that he'll do it as soon as the current threat subsides. The young master will become a beacon of light for all the Kushan lives that have been darkened by Kliphoff's manifestation, and we mean that in more ways than one. Soon after he united his people for the defense of their capital, Salat was joined in the council chambers by Farnace and Serpico. The former enacted the formation of the Four Kings, while the latter took care of straggler trolls. Now that the Four Kings' light permeates the royal palace, he can use thought transference once more to guide his people towards it. The formation's light is the only thing that can protect them from the onslaught of the trolls, so we figure the Kushan and the rest of the Black Swordsman party that's out in the city will fly towards it like so many moths. Isidro and Azan might take a bit longer to catch up, but we can see Rickert leading a terrified Magnifico back to the palace while he cuts a path through countless trolls using one of his ingenious inventions. The Elfhelm mages all know how to use magic, so making their way to the formation won't be difficult at all. It's what they do after they've reconvened that we need to dive into, because things won't be as smooth as they've been so far. Their biggest problem is headed for their most vulnerable point, and only Salat seems to be aware of this. As soon as Rakshas escapes the council chamber through the shadows, the young master follows and realizes that he's headed for Guts. We hope that he has the good sense to telepathically contact one of his ground allies, because it doesn't look like he'll make it there in time, and even if he does, Salat will need a lot of backup in case Rakshas succeeds in doing what he's here to do. At first, we thought he was there to summon Slan so she could ruin our hero's resistance, but now we think it's way worse. He's headed for Guts' cell while the rest of the capital scrambles to defend itself, and the last words Rakshas says in chapter 379 is, "There you are." He's clearly been looking for Guts, and the Black Swordsman has never needed friends like he does now. We think it's safe to say that Salat will send his best magical soldiers after the guy in anticipation of the Black Beast's awakening. But whether he'll succeed or not is a whole other thing. He's been on edge since Guts arrived to his homeland because he knows that something bad is about to go down, and that man will be involved in it. Daiba's prophecy, which led him to rescuing the seahorse, mentioned that the Black Beast will bring destruction to the Kushan, which is probably why Salat has Guts chained up and far away from his weapons. Right now, Farnace is probably the only witch who could keep his mind intact because Shirke is out of commission, and no other mage in the city has a connection with the guy. We're sure he'll ask her and Serpico to help him deal with the problem first by law of proximity, which makes things even more intriguing, seeing as the latter wants to keep the former away from Guts during times like this. Serpico's only life goal is to keep Farnace alive and happy, and the reason he fights Guts twice is because he knows that hanging with him will get her killed eventually. When Guts beats him in a fair duel, Serpico relents and decides to trust in his inhuman tenacity, but he was shocked that Guts didn't resist being put in chains by the Kushan. If he goes to save him with his mistress, will he even recognize them? And if he does, will he care enough not to lash out and kill them? That's the quandary we suspect chapter 380 will focus on, because the choice between struggling as a man or thriving as a demon. The ultimate question for Guts. So, Rakshas isn't in Guts' cell for no reason, right? He's got a plan to put into motion, and when he first came back to life, he was confused as to what that was. He felt content fighting the young master and his minions because it was what he'd done his entire life. But when the formation of the Four went live, Rakshas could no longer continue the attack without taking severe losses, so he escaped through the shadows. If you've seen any of our videos on him, and we suggest you watch them all, light and flames are Rakshas' greatest weaknesses. The Four Kings' cleansing aura makes Rakshas hightail it out of the Kurultai council chamber because he needs darkness to recharge his batteries. So you can imagine his delight when he senses the brand of sacrifice close by. Rakshas immediately kills his way to Guts' cell and makes that remark we mentioned earlier, but what exactly is he here to do? Being an apostle, you'd think his first instinct would be to kill and devour the guy, seeing as that's his primary nature. But it doesn't feel like he's here for that. Even though it might give him the recharge he needs so desperately, Rakshas might just forego eating Guts because there are worse things in store for him. Griffith, being the military genius that he is, would have no doubt updated his generals on the existence of Guts. Maybe they'd already heard of the Black Swordsman that kills apostles as if they were nothing more than men, but they needed to know he was the real deal. Grunbeld was excited when he met him during the assault on Flora's mansion, and then he became frustrated because he couldn't find an answer for the Berserker armor. Given the fact that Rickert slapped him in front of his most important subjects, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for Griffith to put a hit out on him and Guts, and Rakshas's presence in his cell could just be him tying up loose ends. But on the other hand, he had no idea he was in the Kushan capital until he shook the cobwebs off his eyes, and when he did, he also sensed that Qliphoth was manifesting. Rakshas must be aware of the fact that the God Hand brought him back to life, because no apostle has been resurrected once they've entered the abyss. Rakshas is the first one, so making assassination his prime objective would kind of undercut the importance of his revival. What wouldn't do that is if he decides to offer Guts an alliance, and there are a couple of reasons why he'd take such a step. Rakshas might be an apostle, but like Ganishka before him, his driving desire is to kill Griffith personally. Knowing Guts' history with him in any capacity is bound to make him think he could be a great ally, so perhaps he's there to recruit him. Maybe apostles have some sort of ability to draw power from a brand of sacrifice, because Rakshas could use that kind of juice to protect him from the Four Kings right about now. But what we think is a lot more likely to happen is that he's here to tempt Guts into becoming an apostle on orders from Slan. Slan is the only connective tissue between everything that's happening in the manga right now. She's the supreme ruler of Qliphoth, she can spawn trolls like nobody's business, and she's perhaps the only God Hand member that can bring apostles back to life. Slan also has a morbid fascination with Guts, and she's tried to recruit him a couple of times but never quite succeeded because he wasn't broken enough. Yet. Guts had Casca as his guiding light of morality, but now that she's in Griffith's clutches, the time is ripe. If there was a moment in time where the greatest enemy of the apostles could end up joining them, it's the one that's coming up in chapter 380, and we think we'll finally discover whether Bechi the Behelit belongs to Guts or not. We think it does, because despite all his good qualities, Guts has the kind of madness that turns good men evil. You have to remember that apostles aren't made by exploiting one's malice, they're made by exploiting their sense of powerlessness, which the God Hand erases through malice. Despair and desperation are key components of activating a Behelit, and Guts certainly is there mentally, but what matters more is whether he craves power or not. After his conversation with the Beast of Darkness in chapter 373, we think he does, and that he doesn't care how he gets it. The Beast might have been talking about the Berserker armor in its speech, but becoming an apostle would be better for Guts, seeing as it would restore his lost physical senses and then some. This would explain why he saw Shirke at the beginning of chapter 376 because, while he was unconscious, it looked like he had astrally projected himself into the dragon path of the astral world. She saved him from being swept away by the tide that either represents Griffith or the vortex of souls, and when Guts came back to his senses, he couldn't understand what had just happened. Maybe Shirke found his soul in the dragon path unintentionally and saved him from doing something incredibly stupid, like giving in to Griffith. But how will she save him from Slan and her personal agent without waking up from her slumber? We think Shirke is due for a return soon anyway, considering she's been gone way too long and the narrative actually needs her presently. We hope it's within the context of redeeming Guts' soul, because she was the last person who entered his psyche before he broke down completely, and their special bond could be the only thing keeping him from casting everything into the fire. If Rakshas is indeed there to recruit him and not just to hurt him, then chapter 380's importance within the canon of Berserk cannot be overstated. We just hope someone can intervene before Guts agrees with him, and the prime candidate for pulling that off is someone who's been missing since Elfhelm was destroyed. The return of the Wandering Wraith! Will Skull Knight show up to protect his allies? The last we saw of Skull Knight, he was taking care of the blood flow of dead that threatened to swallow every living thing on Skellig Island whole. He told Isidro to get out of there with Yzma, and he did his best to keep their attention on him. Skull Knight's words during that time period made it feel like this was the moment he warned Guts about in chapter 361, when he said that causality was yet to converge. In chapter 368, as he was saving his fellow strugglers' companions from the blood flow, he remarked at Isidro's stubborn refusal to leave and mused to himself that this collapse might have been fated, but to struggle against it was also a part of mankind's destiny. He usually shows up in or around the time of a major temporal crisis, so it's natural to assume that he could show up at the Kushan capital as well. The last time Qliphoth opened up, Skull Knight rushed over on his jet-like horse and immediately confronted Slan because that was a once-in-a-lifetime chance for him. A God Hand manifested in the physical domain, and Skull Knight had the opportunity to trap them within their own prison of souls, which he wanted to abuse maliciously. He couldn't do it back then, but maybe he can do it now. We can never rule out a Skull Knight appearance during a time like this because that is practically his MO. But the real question is, will he be on time? And what happens if he doesn't show? Guts has finally started realizing that the details of their lives might differ, but he and Skull Knight are one and the same. They were both subject to the horrors of the eclipse and the endless night that followed, so we imagined that the Skull Knight would rush to Guts' rescue as soon as he sensed what was going on. He might just show up behind Rakshas in the next chapter and prevent him from doing any of the things we predicted he would do earlier in this video, but that is a giant if. Let's not forget that Skull Knight is also the guy responsible for triggering Fantasia, and Rakshas was there when it went down. If he tries to talk sense into Guts, he could just reveal that information and muddy the waters further, because Guts' practical mind won't accept such a blunder coming from the man trying to guide him on his path. Skull Knight's appearance could backfire instead of being helpful, but that's something we'll only know when he actually shows up. We are hoping that he does, by the way, considering how dire the situation has become, but we want to know what you think about the same because... Marvelous verdict! That's all we've got for you guys on this one. Let us know whether you agree or disagree with our predictions in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Berserk content. We'll see you guys in the next one, and until then, stay safe and remember, keep on struggling, strugglers.